Hey everybody, it's Ed. Before we get started, I want to give you a quick update on the Bozeman event. In case you haven't heard, we're doing a live podcast in Bozeman, Montana on Friday, August 30th at the Ellen Theater right there in downtown Bozeman. We've got a great lineup of guests. We're going to have Kate Havstad, Jillian Lekuski, Becca Skinner, and Juanita Vero. And a portion of the proceeds from the evening are going to go to support the Montana Land Reliance and the great work they're doing in conservation all over Montana. If you want to learn more about the event, go to mountainandprairie.com/Bozeman. And the tickets are selling pretty quickly, and a lot more quickly than I thought, which is awesome. But we've already sold over a third of the tickets, and the event is still like 4 months out. So not trying to be the slimy salesman that I once was, but I would encourage you to grab a few tickets if you want to attend, because at this rate, they're selling pretty quick. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's already gotten tickets. Appreciate everybody who's considering getting some, and I'll look forward to seeing you all in Bozeman in August. Thanks a lot. Hey, this is Ed Robertson, and this is the Mountain and Prairie Podcast, where I introduce you to some of the innovative individuals who are shaping the future of the American West. I meet most of these people through my work in land conservation or through my hobbies and interests that revolve around spending time up high in the mountains. My guests include ranchers, writers, entrepreneurs, conservationists, athletes, artists, adventurers, pretty much anyone who's doing important work, has an interesting story, and loves the American West. My guest today is Logan Maxwell Hagege. If you love the West and you love art, then you're likely already a fan of Logan's. He's a renowned painter whose depictions of the people and landscapes of the West have won him acclaim around the globe. His work is as stunning as it is unique, and when you see one of Logan's pieces, there's no doubt in anyone's mind as to exactly who painted it. He uses bold colors and striking composition to create a style that's completely his own. A style that continues to evolve even after all of his success. Logan was born and raised in California, and he's been an obsessive artist for as long as he can remember. Whether drawing, playing music, surfing, or painting, Logan has always gone all in on his creative pursuits. And as you'll hear, Logan's tendency towards obsession is fueled by a tireless work ethic and deep commitment to continue to grow as an artist. He's always pushing himself, and he refuses to rest on his laurels. But that's not to say that Logan doesn't suffer from artistic blocks from time to time. But when he does, rather than wallow, he's developed hard-nosed, time-tested methods of summoning creativity and continuing to push forward. I've been a fan of Logan's for many years, so I was thrilled to get the opportunity to talk with him. We covered a lot, including his childhood creative obsessions and how his parents nurtured his artistic streak. We talk about his art education and how he made the jump from art student to professional artist. Logan describes the evolution of his artwork and how his early paintings are almost unrecognizable when compared to his current style. We talk about how he maintains focus after so many years of professional art, and he describes specific ways that he pushes himself to continue to evolve as an artist. He explains how he knows when a painting is finished and how having a son has changed his routine and outlook. And as usual, we discuss favorite books, films, and the best advice he's ever received. There's a ton of useful information in this episode, so be sure to check out the episode notes for links to everything. Hope you enjoy. When you meet somebody for the first time and they ask you that question people love to ask, what do you do? How do you answer that question?
The answer is basically I just say I'm an artist.
Yep.
And then I back that up with I make paintings. And then they say, what kind of paintings? And I say oil paintings. And then they say, what subject? And I'll usually say I paint the West, landscapes and people of the West.
So we were just talking about this before we started recording, but it's a hard question. But if you had to describe your art, because it's so unique, and that's one of the many reasons I wanted to have you on here is because when you look at Western art, there's a lot out there, and yours just stands out as being so amazingly unique. So, I mean, how do you describe it, or can you describe it?
It's tough for me. I think of it as, I've gone through several phases or I don't know, incarnations of in my career here and my development and my style. So I try to, I describe it as there's elements of realism and there are elements of abstraction, and it's a stylized realism. So I generally say it's stylized realism if I'm talking to somebody that is somewhat versed in the art world, because that makes sense. But to an average person, I pretty much just say, I make oil paintings of the West, and then I'll show them a picture because, I'll pull out my phone and show them a picture, because it is really hard to describe. Because when you hear the word or the term Western art, there's a sort of image that might pop up into people's minds. And I don't know that my work really fits in with that. Mm-hmm. I don't really think of myself as a Western artist as much as I fall into that. And I show in a lot of, shows and museums that are hosting a lot of Western art. I feel like my work, I don't relate to it. I relate to the region in a lot of ways, but I'm not sure that I relate to the term Western art as much. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I feel like your work is almost a category into itself. Because when I think of Western art, you think of, cowboys and just kind of classic, what anybody, almost like a movie version of like a Western movie, whereas yours is so different than that. So maybe the best way to kind of understand how you got to where you are is start at the beginning of your artistic career. I mean, have you always been an artistic person ever since you were a little kid? Has that always been a big part of your life?
Yeah, it has. I started out, I want to say it was second or third grade. In my elementary school, we used to go to a public library once a week on a field trip. Mm-hmm. And while all the other smart kids were reading books, I would pick up I'd pick up the how to draw books, like how to draw comic book characters or how to draw cartoon characters, that kind of thing. And I'd sit there and what I used to do is I would just trace over the drawings, and I basically taught myself how to draw that way. Just it's muscle memory and, just going through the motions over and over. And that was it. And I recently pulled out some drawings out of storage from when I was just a little kid. I was like 5 years old or something, and I was already starting. But then, later in elementary school, doing more and more. And that's kind of really where it started for me. So I always was kind of doodling. I got into comic books as a, I don't know how old would I have been? Maybe like 11 or 12 years old. I got into comic books, and then was just always drawing and doodling. Just like every artist is going to tell you the same thing. They were always drawing and doodling as a kid. It kind of went I lost it for a bit because I started playing music, and then got really big into music, and then started surfing in my later sort of teenage years, got really big into that. And really wasn't until after high school that I started to take art seriously again.
So after high school, it seems like on this podcast, there are kind of two different groups when I'm talking to artists. One just basically gets going on their own and manages to make a career out of it. And then there's another camp that studies art formally at university and then kind of evolves from there. Which camp do you fall in, or are you somewhere in the middle?
Somewhere in the middle. I didn't go to university. I went to a specialized art academy. Okay. That was based on the old French academic model, where you're basically drawing and painting from live models all day, every day.
Oh, wow. Where was that?
And it was here in Los Angeles, Southern California. It was called, it was in the San Fernando Valley, actually. It's not even around anymore. It's a school called Associates in Art. Okay. And it was basically all these professional artists that were teaching there. It was almost like a trade school in a way. It was interesting. But I happened to fall in right when it was like the golden era of this school, where they had this program where they were offering that with drawing and painting for models all day, every day. And that's really where I feel like I got a really strong foundation and I felt like I was able to do anything with it from there. It's learning all the basic skills, and then I was able to run with it.
And so, you obviously developed this, like you were saying, a foundational skill set. But when you got done with school, did you, at that point, were you like, I want to be a professional artist, this is all I want to do? Or did you have to transition into it more slowly than that? What was the transition like?
I'll take a step back. So the reason I the way I found that school, let's see, what was I doing at the time? So I went to 1 semester. I won't even say a year. I went to 1 semester of a junior college here in Santa Monica. And I'll step back even further. I always hated school. I was miserable every day in school from basically first grade on.
Oh, really?
I hated every day of it. Yeah. And then I go to junior college and I'm like, what am I doing here? I hate this. And school is obviously not for me. And so I found an internship at an animation studio, which I thought was going to be where I was going to go with my career. I thought I was going to go into cartoons and animation.
Yep.
So I was able to get an internship at a studio, and they said, hey, why don't you go check out this school? You can brush up on your skills a little bit, improve your drawing skills, and then, that'll just help you along in your animation career. And so when I did do that, I went over to that school and started taking more life drawing classes, and I was exposed to, painting and fine art, the fine art side of everything, or of the art world. And that really shifted my thinking. All of a sudden, I realizing I didn't really like animation. I didn't like the collaborative nature of animation. Mm-hmm. I'm much more of a solitary guy. I like to work on my own, like my own ideas. And so anyhow, so that's where I ended up. That's how I ended up at that school. And then from there, again, just being exposed to fine art and then art galleries and seeing that people actually sell their paintings that they're able to make in their studios or painting out on location. It opened up a world for me. So I was just really naive and in a good way, naive. And I just said, okay, well, that's what I'm going to do. And basically I was trickling off. I was taking a few classes here and there, but then I started to show my work, send my work out to galleries, send my portfolio out. And then I picked up a small gallery here in Southern California, and that was pretty much it. I started showing there and slowly started selling paintings, and I was pretty much off and running from there.
That's great. And so you think about those first, your portfolio, you mentioned that you were, showing to these galleries. What was that work like compared to what you're doing now? Or was it completely different? Or was it, I mean, obviously it's the evolution, was there, but how would you describe that work compared to what you do today?
Yeah, it's almost unrecognizable.
Oh, really? Cool.
You wouldn't even know it was me. Because as a student fresh out of art school, I didn't really know myself yet as an artist. I hadn't quite found my voice. I was probably showing in galleries a little too soon, but I was ambitious and I wanted to get going. I felt like I was behind. I always remember I was looking at all these historic artists from the past, and I was looking at what they were doing when they were 20 years old or 20, however old I was, 19, 20 years old at the time. And, I was going, God, these guys were so good and I'm so far behind, I always have just felt that way. So I just wanted to get going. Anyhow, so the art I was just looking at my influences. At the time, I was really into a Spanish painter named Joaquin Sorolla. Mm-hmm. And he painted a lot of figures outdoors, or people outdoors on the beach. And there's an artist who's still around today, a great artist named Dan McCaw. He lives here in Southern California. So I feel like I was influenced by Dan McCaw and Sorolla and a handful of other artists, and I kind of put that all together. So I was painting, like sort of romantic impressionist paintings of women on the beach and some nude sort of women paintings of women and that sort of thing. Just because that's what I was studying in school. I was drawing and painting naked people all day. And so I was kind of doing these academic studies. And anyway, I was kind of all over the place. And it evolved from there. So really, I started showing that work. And then I started not liking my work. I was sick of it. It didn't feel like it was me. And I think I took about 3 or 4 months off from painting. I was just trying to figure myself out. And I was drawing a lot in a sketchbook. And just trying to find my voice a little bit. So after that initial phase of which lasted for a couple of years, painting those impressionist figures.
Yep.
I really rebelled and went the other way, and I started painting similar subjects where it was women on the beach, but they were like almost completely abstract, where they were just these real simple shapes, and I was just exploring and trying to find myself.
I'm curious about that because I would think that even if you weren't making a living as an artist or, having professional success as an artist, making a hard turn like that could be challenging. But I would, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that, so you would establish yourself in a certain style and people were interested in your, I assume making money if they're in galleries. Was there any were you nervous at all about, well, what are they going to think about this new way I'm going? Or was it, you were so tired of it that you just didn't give a shit at that point?
Yeah, I really didn't give a shit. It was, and I still don't to this day. I mean, I feel like that's one thing I've been able to hold on to. I'll say at the time I was selling paintings, but I wasn't making a great living.
Yeah.
I never had to get a job, but I was able to keep my costs down, and I may have still been living with my parents at the time,
Sure.
So I was able to live off of not much, but so that wasn't really a thought. I just wasn't happy with the work, and I always wanted to strive to be a great artist. I'm still trying to get there, so I felt that I needed to find my voice. That was really the most important thing. For a time I was obsessed with trying to be the most academic, painting these really realistic paintings and just getting better and better and better. But around that time I realized that, when I really looked at art history and the great artists out there that I admired, they weren't artists that weren't necessarily technically the best, but they had a very clear vision and a clear voice, and they were unique in their own way. So that's really what became important to me. I wanted to find, or just it's not about finding, but it's letting your voice, my own voice out. And so that's what I was after. I was trying to just get my voice out there.
Back to the not caring about what other people think. I mean, had that always been a part of your personality, just pretty independent? And if so, what do you attribute that to other than just genetics? I mean, did your parents encourage that kind of thing, or were you kind of a rebel as a young guy? Where did that? Because that goes against human nature in some ways. I think we're programmed to want to fit in to the tribe or to the group, and so I'm always very impressed when people at a young age are able to just say, "Screw it, I'm going to do what I want to do." Where did that come from?
That's hard to say. I mean, I think my parents for sure were supportive of anything I wanted to do. I mean, I remember, when I started getting into music, my parents just went out and they bought me a drum kit, and then I wanted to play the guitar. They went out and got me a guitar, got me guitar lessons. And I wanted to play the bass. They went out and got me a bass, and it was just like, they're super supportive of whatever my interests were.
Yep.
When I started getting into surfing, they were supportive of that. I wanted to start making surfboards, so my dad helped me get going with that. And so anyway, they were super supportive of all that stuff. I know my dad was the type of guy that didn't really give a shit. So yeah, maybe some of that got passed down. I've always been that way. Even when I was a kid, I wasn't trying to really fit into anything, any particular group. In school, I had friends. Wasn't a clique situation. I was just kind of friends with whoever I wanted to be friends with, and I feel like I've just always kind of been that way.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like you see a lot of super successful people, because obviously on this podcast I talk to people and then I read a lot of biographies, and that having that support of your parents, it seems like it can go one of two ways. Like people that have that, they either turn out to be really, badasses because they're not worried about what other people think because they know they have this unconditional love, or they can turn out to be spoiled brats. And I think the X factor in there is the work ethic and the drive. And if you couple the drive with the support, it's a pretty unstoppable combo. And I can't, just a minute ago you were talking about this. You would see these master artists and how much they'd accomplished. And it sounds like you're very driven, and you always have been. Does that come from your parents as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. I think it just comes from wanting to understand whatever subject or topic, whatever it is that I'm into at the time. Mm-hmm. I want to get better at it. I don't want to just play a couple chords on the guitar. I want to really understand it and improve and get better and better. So I don't even know where the work ethic comes from, because that wasn't apparent when it came to certain things, but like school.
Yeah.
But when it came to something I was passionate about, I would just jump in all the way in. I would just dive in, it was everything. It became all encompassing. When I was into each different thing, it was everything. It was the world to me.
So fast forward to where you are now, and you've obviously experienced a lot of success, and you've got, your art. It strikes a chord with a lot of people. Everybody from people like me to high end collectors. So how do you keep that fire going to want to continue to improve? I mean, are there any techniques you use or specific things if you start feeling kind of in a funk or feeling unsatisfied with what you're doing? I mean, how do you stoke that fire now?
Yeah, I think that if I am feeling that way, if I'm feeling like I'm sick of what I'm working on or not feeling excited about what I do, there's two things I'll do. Number one, if I'm in the studio, the next painting that I'm going to start or that I'm on will be almost the polar opposite of the painting that's driving me crazy. Mm-hmm. So if I'm working on a painting that's real complex and might be a little bit more on the realistic side, my next painting is going to be real simple and more stylized or more abstract, just to shake up my brain a little bit and get me thinking a different way. And then another way is just going outside and painting outdoors, maybe going on a trip out to the desert to go paint, or even just here, where I live, just getting outside helps a lot of times.
So when did the West, specific, the Southwest, and kind of your current focus, when did that become the kind of the such a dominant part of your artistic life?
That was, when was that? I want to say around 2004. I took a trip out to the desert with a group of artists, and we went to Canyon de Chelly in Arizona. Yeah. There were a bunch of artists, like 18 or 20 artists. We all went on a trip there. We all camped in the canyon and painted. And I drove out with a good friend of mine named Glenn Dean. And so I think that trip started it for me. It really sparked something. And I was exposed to a lot of things and a subject that really appealed to my aesthetic. There were these big shapes that I could simplify and break down to basic elements. And all of a sudden, it just like a bell went off in my head. I was like, oh, okay, this feels right to me, And anybody for anybody that's been through the West, I feel like it's just such an inspiring and exciting place. So that, those two things, just that feeling of inspiration and exploration, coupled with the possibilities in the subject itself, it just, and, it appealing to my aesthetic, it all kind of clicked for me on that trip.
Yeah. That makes sense. It is. I clearly remember the first time I ever went out West was to the Grand Canyon. And for somebody brand new to it, obviously you grew up in California, but it is so awe-inspiring. I couldn't imagine seeing it from an artistic standpoint. Kind of back to your process of creating this art. How do you have a specific routine you follow on a daily basis? Because on this podcast, it seemed, again, when I'm speaking with artists, they're kind of two ends of the spectrum. People that paint when they feel inspired, and then people that act like they're working at a factory and they check in every morning and get to work. And where are you on that spectrum?
Well, I guess that depends on, let's see. So before having a kid is a different,
give me the before and after.
Post having a kid. Yeah. So the before was definitely when I was at the studio, by say 10 o'clock, I'd work all day. Almost like a factory work. I'd clock in and take my lunch around the same time, paint, do whatever I need to do. And then I was, take off by 6 o'clock or something. And then always working at night as well, whether that's drawing in my sketchbook or maybe painting watercolors or something at night. It's just, I can't turn it off. So now having a kid, I really love being around my son and my wife. So I kind of work my schedule around them and his nap schedule and that sort of thing. So, I usually hang out with them in the morning, get over to my studio for a few hours, come back home for the afternoon into evening. And then once he goes to bed at night, I'll go back and paint from either my home studio or drive over to my studio and work for a few hours at night. So really I'm working the same amount of hours. I'm just working it around everybody else's schedule. So I get to spend time with the family.
Yeah. We were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, but the kid thing, we've got kids about the our oldest are about the same age, and not even from an artistic standpoint, but just generally your perspective on things. How did having a kid change your outlook? Because it's you hear all these damn cliches about having kids, and when you're not in it, they sound silly. But then when you're in it, you're like, oh, they're cliches for a reason. So, yeah. I mean, how did it affect you overall, either professionally or personally?
Well, personally, I mean, it just puts everything into perspective and shows that all my bullshit is just stupid, when it comes down to it,
Yes.
Me worrying about a painting and, just whether a painting's going well or not. I mean, it's still the same struggle, but I feel like chambers have opened in my life for the lows and the highs because of having a kid. So the lows are lower and the highs are higher. Mm-hmm. And so now the low of a painting not going well, it doesn't feel as low as some of the lows I've experienced, now having a kid, and a painting that goes really well doesn't feel as exciting as, when my son's just laughing and it's the best feeling ever, So that's the biggest thing for me. I think just putting it all in just perspective, and it's been real healthy for me,
It really is. I mean, I had the same experience. It's such a filter for BS. The stuff that used to get me so fired up, you look back on it and you're like, why did that make me so upset? I completely agree with you on that. You mentioned your studio. Can you describe your studio and how important is that space for your creative process?
Yeah, so my studio is a little over 2,000 square feet, and just pretty much an industrial space. It's got, I want to say, like 18-foot ceilings, and like I said, just one big open kind of warehouse space. Mm-hmm. And it's got all my crap in there. It's got, paintings that I've made along the way in my development, in storage there. And that's where I keep all my frames, where I do all my framing, all my art supplies. I've got a few easels there that I work on because I tend to work on several paintings at once. And yeah, I mean, it is important to me to have a space that I feel like I can, just kind of focus and play around. I like to think of a studio space as a place where I could play around and explore, but also, get down to work when I need to. So get down to business, and then the home studio is just my garage. I've got it set up so that I can work at night if I want to work on like a smaller piece or something like that. I'll work from home as well. And similar kind of setup. It's just got my stuff in it. Not as much obviously as the big studio, but just all that I need here.
And so when you're thinking about your current work, when you're painting these pieces, are they based on photographs or just your memory? Or obviously you said you paint outside some, but where does the inspiration come for these works?
A lot of times I'll start out as just little sketches in a sketchbook. Okay. I'll just do little rough shapes and try to put compositions together. And then from there, it's everything. It's memory, it's photographs, it's, studies done on location. And then I bring all that back into the studio, and then I put these things together. So I try to think of the paintings as being, I want them to feel as vivid as a memory, instead of just recreating a photograph or something that I saw. I want it to feel like something rather than look like something. So I think memory is a big part of it. A lot of times the landscapes and the clouds and all that are just made up out of my head. Generally the figures I'll rely a little bit more on photographs, but I don't look at the photos the whole time that I'm painting them, because I like to just let a lot of simplification happen as I'm working. So if I don't have a photo in front of me, I'll usually simplify things, and it'll just make things feel a little bit, like I said, more like a memory. It's how I remember something. I don't remember all the little details. I remember the big shapes and the big colors, and that's what I want the paintings to feel like.
This is kind of a weird question, but how do you know when you're finished? Like, how do you know when a painting's done? Because I would think, like in any artistic endeavor, whether it's writing or painting or music, you can always tweak. So how do you know, all right, this one's done, on to the next one?
Well, there's two things. Number one really is if I look at a painting and nothing about the painting bothers me, there's usually something that sticks out, and I might not even notice that right away. So when I finish a painting or think I've finished a painting, I'll set it in my studio for as long as I can. And, before I need to send it out, I'll set it there and just look at it every day as I'm working on other things. I'll look at it over and over, and all of a sudden I might not know what's bothering me about a painting until I stare at it for a long time. I go, okay, that's it. There's some stupid little shape in a sagebrush or something in the sky. And it's enough that nobody else would probably notice, but it'd be something that would drive me crazy forever. So I'm thankful, when I notice, I don't always notice it. A lot of times I'll send a painting out and there'd be a little thing that will drive me crazy, but again, nobody else would really notice. So that's not so fun when that happens, but, another reality is the deadline will tell me when something's finished, and sometimes that's a good thing. I'd imagine there have been times in the past when I keep working on something and I'll mess it up by overworking it. And then, where if I maybe stopped, 2 or 3 steps ago, it would have been better, or left it as it was, it would have been better. So, deadlines are a really helpful thing for me because you can just work on something forever, really. So I actually appreciate deadlines.
Yeah, definitely. I'm the same way. I mean, not that I'm an artist, but if I get my wife to impose deadlines on me for certain things, because otherwise things just won't get done. So obviously you studied the, classic artists, but do you look at contemporary artists, maybe that are in your same world? Do you look at their work, or are you, because I've talked to some artists who don't want to look at anybody else's work they don't want to, don't want somebody else's ideas to kind of seep into their brain, and then maybe they use that or, copy it by accident, or just have these other artistic images in their brain. They want it to be sure that it's coming from them. Are you like that, or are you open to looking at, your contemporaries' work and learning from that as well?
I think lately I haven't really been looking at contemporary artists' work as much. Like on social media, I don't follow any other artists, not because I don't love them as people and also think really, highly of their work, but it's really that reason. I want to just have, I don't want things to influence me. Sometimes I'll look at another artist and I'll go, I'll say, man, what am I doing? I need to paint more simply. I need to simplify things and just be more abstract or something. And then I'll look at somebody else that maybe paints more realistically, and I'll go, man, that's cool. Maybe I should add some more detail into my painting, or, and then I start, my brain just starts going places that I don't want it to. And that even applies to historic artists. I start to just, when I go to a museum and look at these great artists, I feel so bad about myself when I leave the museum, because I start comparing my work to theirs, and I just, I question everything. Like, what am I doing? So I have this great art book collection at my studio, and I almost never look at them anymore because I just want my mind and my vision to just be clear and follow the direction that feels right to me. I just follow my instincts from one painting to the next. And a lot of times I don't know where I'm going. It just happens. Even when I'm working on a painting and I finish it, I'll look at a painting and I just go, how did I even do that? And I say that not in a way like, wow, I'm great. How did I do that? I mean, like, literally, how did I do that? I don't remember even working on the painting. They just come out of me, So I like to just keep that stream clear, or that, whatever I'm trying to say, that channel clear, so I could just work and follow my instincts and let my voice come out clearly instead of having it through filters of, other artists. Of course, that's going to happen no matter what, because I've looked at so much art. Yes. So artists are going to influence me. I can't help that, but I just try as much to let a clear voice come through without, earlier in my career, I would say, I wonder how Maynard Dixon or George O'Keeffe would have handled this. And I might open one of their books and I go, okay, that's it. and they sort of like a cheat or something. They answer the question for me, and then I might take a little bit from their work, and which is okay, I think. But lately, I've been trying to avoid that as much as I can.
This is this is on the minutia, but I am curious. When you're painting, do you listen to music or do you listen to audiobooks or podcasts? I mean, what is the scene like when you're painting, as far as information that you're letting into your head as you're painting?
It's all over the place, really. It's podcasts. It's talk radio. It's music.
Okay.
It's books on tape. A lot of times it's all those things within a half hour. I might be listening to a podcast and someone will mention a musician and it'll pop into my head, and then I can't get a song out of my head, so I have to go put that song on. And then I get that out of my system, go back to that podcast or book on tape, whatever it is. So it's everything. Just my mood dictates, and it's all kinds of music and all kinds of talk radio and podcasts, and just everything.
Okay, everything. Got it.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about being a professional artist, I mean, obviously the talent is mandatory, and there are a lot of talented people and a lot of creative people. But so then there's this next step of figuring out the business side of things and how to, the marketing side of things, and figuring, how do you kind of get your talents out to the world? And you obviously figured it out early, but what do you think? Do you have any advice? Like if somebody were coming along and trying to figure out this balance between the marketing side almost, or the promotion side and the work, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think, they're both important if you're trying to make a living as an artist. Mm-hmm. But the development as an artist really is key. That's above everything for me. That's my advice to up and coming artists. Their marketing and all that, I guess, helps. But
yeah,
if you haven't put in the work and haven't developed yourself as an artist, then you're just marketing something that doesn't deserve to be marketed in a sense. I'm not trying to put anybody down, but
no, I know what you mean.
I'll apply that to myself. If I had started really trying to get myself out there, and I'm networking, and social media wasn't really happening as much when I was getting started, but I'm kind of thankful that Instagram wasn't around when I started, because there would have been a lot of junk out there.
Sure.
So I think developing yourself as an artist is key. But I did do some of that networking and stuff. I pulled back quite a bit just because, I just want to work, and I've kind of gotten sick of that side of things. And I feel like for me personally, the business of art can be really distracting. Mm-hmm. And it's just unimportant in a lot of ways. It's important to make it's great for me to be able to make a living as an artist, but there's just so much noise out there when it comes to the value of art and auctions of art and just the whole thing. I mean, I recall just saying, man, I wish I could get into some magazine, an art magazine, when I was getting started. And then you do, and it happens, and then nothing really happens. You think the world's going to split open and just your life is going to change. And a couple people might say they saw your article or something in a magazine, and that's it. So it's like, it's a cumulative process. It's all these things building up together over years, and rushing it isn't going to help. I think just developing is the most important thing.
So when you think about your career as an artist, are there any mentors or heroes you've had? And I'm not just talking about from an artistic standpoint, but just it sounds like you're obviously very driven. You're focused on the process. It seems like you're very good at cutting out all the distraction BS that could infiltrate your mind. Are there any people that you've learned that from, or people that, and again, they don't have to be artists, but just mentors, heroes, people you may just know of that come to mind?
Let's see. It's tough. I mean, I feel like I've really looked at artists, mostly historic, mm-hmm. For guidance. They've just kind of helped me, and it's not so much on how to be an artist, but, or I should say the business side of art, but, their devotion to art, the way they've devoted their lives to it. That's been really inspiring to me. So I always think about that. it's not a job for most artists. It's just part of your life. It's a way of life.
Yeah.
And I see that time after time when I look at great artists of the past. And I, I'm really inspired by artists again that find their voice and are able to just be unique in the world, because there's so many people out there. There's so many artists out there. It's amazing to think of somebody like, let's go with the big famous artist that everybody knows, like an artist like Van Gogh, for instance. It's just amazing that what he did at the time was so far out, and and you could apply that to other artists like Monet or whoever. There's hundreds and thousands of them, but it's I think that's just such a cool thing to be able to put out into the world, your own vision of the world. So and when it comes to people outside the art world, I don't know them, but someone like Bob Dylan is a great example for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Someone who's followed his own voice, and God, he's been everywhere with his music and hasn't been pinned down by any style or his success that he's had. He's just been real exploratory, which is I think is really inspiring.
Are there any books on creativity that have meant anything to you, or that you recommend to people, or even books on the artistic process, anything like that comes to mind, or is it? Do you not go down those rabbit holes?
I have in the past. So there's a book called The Art Spirit.
Oh, cool! I've never heard of that.
By Robert Henry. Yeah, by Robert Henry. It's Henri. And then the name of the book just flew out of my head. Charles Hawthorne. I'm sitting in front of a computer. Maybe I'll look it up. I'm blanking on the name of this book. It was a big one for me. But talking about, that's more the process of art. The Hawthorne book. I want to say it's called Notes on Color or something like that. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Hawthorne on Painting. There you go. Hawthorne on Painting.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like a $4 book you can get anywhere online. But,
cool.
Yeah, and that's so that's a little bit more. I feel like the art spirit can be applied, to anybody. Anybody can be interested in that. The Hawthorne on Painting is a little bit more specific to painting, but both interesting books and helpful.
Those are great, and nobody's ever mentioned either of those that I remember. So that's perfect, awesome. So obviously, art is. Art and family are the main pillars from what it sounds like. But what else do you do for fun? Do you still surf?
No, I don't. I mean, I every day I think I want to get back into it. The last time I surfed, it was like starting over from scratch. It was
it's
horrible.
so hard.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's not like riding a bike at all. I lost knowledge of the waves and how to catch a wave, basic stuff like that, and obviously the physicality of it. I lost that. It's just so difficult. It's so hard on your body. I'm like the guy that I used to make fun of when I was a surfer. Surfers, I used to be this jerk surfer kid, and I was like, I've become the guy that I used to make fun of, the guy that surfs on weekends or something. And I don't even do that, so stupid. But so I'd like to get back into that. I sooner or later will, just because that was a real. It clears my mind. It's talk about being present. It's a really great thing. But yeah, so I don't surf anymore. I've taken up pottery, like throwing pottery on a wheel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the last couple of years, just for myself, really. And that's another thing. Really makes me feel really present and in the moment. But yeah, activity wise, man, I'm pretty boring. I just kind of paint, hang out with my family, and that's pretty on a hike and mountain bike and stuff like that. But that's not too out of this. People are.
I don't think that's boring.
Expect that from an. Well, no, it's definitely not boring. But I don't think it's not a far out thing for people to expect from an artist that spends a lot of time outside.
Yeah. Well, surfing is probably my favorite thing in the world, and it's weird because I live out here in Colorado. But it is such the thing about you said about being in the moment. I feel like surfing is the easiest way to. It's not easy, but if you can figure out how to surf and learn how to surf, that is a surefire way to really experience life on a moment by moment basis. It's so amazing. It's so amazing. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like these surfer dude, dude is so cool. But again, it's those cliches that are true. They're true that people say them for a reason.
Absolutely. I mean, there's like, when you're actually riding a wave, you're not even, it's like you're almost not even present. You're just not even, time and space doesn't exist because you are so into the split second of every moment. And it's pretty unreal. But also even just sitting on your board waiting for a wave and you're just out on the ocean. And like you said, the cliche of it all, it's like, it's there for a reason.
It really is.
It's for a reason.
It's magical. I need to, I've only been to California twice, which is ridiculous. And, but I went out there last year and I surfed in Northern California, and man, it's so fun. But again, I lost it. I mean, the muscles you need, the balance, it just, you got to do it. It's like, I don't play golf, but it's like what I hear about golf, and that you got to do it a lot to be good at it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. I mean, I used to surf every day when I was a teenager and into my early 20s. And it got to the point where I was never, great at it, but it got to the point where it was just like instinct. I didn't have to think about it. I was able to go out and catch waves all day. I'd surf for 6 hours, and man, I'd be lucky to catch a wave in a whole session nowadays. It's kind of depressing actually how much I've lost it, but well, if you ever come out to Southern California, we can go out and splash around in the water together and
two old men
catch a wave. Yeah.
We'll have each other's back when they try to beat us up.
That's right. That's right.
Well, so let's, I've got some questions that I love to run by everybody I have on the podcast. I'd love to run through those with you real quick if you have the time, and just get your thoughts on those.
Sure.
So when you think about, we talked a little bit about books from a creative standpoint. Are there any books about the West that are your favorite books about the West, or maybe that have influenced your artistic process around the West?
I guess the like going back to the cliche thing. I'm sure this book's been mentioned 1,000 times, but Desert Solitaire.
Yep.
is a big one for me. I mean, to be honest, I spend a lot of time listening to books more than actually reading them, just because the nature of what I do. Sure. And the way I manage my time, I'd generally rather be sketching in a book than reading one. But so Desert Solitaire is a big one for me. And then, I read tons of art books on artists themselves, but outside of the West, basically anything by David McCullough is awesome. Is good for me. He could write down a menu and I would read it,
He's so good.
It's amazing. So there's another book, actually related to artists. I'm just thinking of this. There's another book. It's called Daily Rituals: How Artists Work. I've heard of that. So it's by a guy named, I believe it's a man, by Mason Curry. Mm-hmm. And I just love that. I mean, I don't know why, but I love reading about artists' rituals. So it's writers, painters, all sorts of artists, musicians, and it just covers their real specific daily rituals and their routine throughout the day. We mentioned the timing, of how your artistic process plays out on a daily basis, but do you have any kind of unexpected or funny or weird rituals you do on a daily basis, but to get things going? Not really. I mean, I feel like my drive to my studio, I've got about a 15-minute drive to my studio. I feel like that kind of centers me in a way, gets me ready for working. And that sounds crazy because I'm driving in Southern California. There's nothing relaxing about that, but the drive to my studio is actually really nice. I drive out through rolling hills, and so I think that kind of gets me in the right headspace to get to work. But beyond that, there's nothing too crazy. I just get into my studio and I get to work. There's a quote. I don't know if this has been mentioned on your show before, but there's a pretty famous quote by the artist Chuck Close. Mm-hmm. And it's something like, I should have thought about this before I'm going to spew it off here, but it's something like inspiration is for amateurs. Real artists just get to work, or something like that. I'm not saying it wrong. No, I know that quote, and I love that quote. I think that's so important. Yeah, it is, and I feel that way. And again, not to say that there's anything wrong with waiting to be inspired till you need to work, but for me, I work through things to find inspiration, even if I'm not. I get there by working through something. So I really that quote really works for me, and so that's the way I think it when I'm at my studio. I just kind of, to get going, I just get going. There's some famous, I can't remember who it is, but the quote, "To begin."
Yeah,
that's just what you got to do. So I just get to my studio, I get to work, whatever that means, whether that's stretching a canvas, framing a painting, or just jumping right in and getting to work.
I think that's such valuable advice, because I think nowadays there is this kind of trend of, like the Tim Ferriss life hack kind of thing, and these shortcuts to do this and all. But I think the key, I found it whenever I try to write anything, it's just so damn hard for me, and you just got to sit down and get your ass kicked a little bit and do it. There's just no other way. I haven't found a better way to do it.
I find myself stressing over the work more than is even necessary. Go, man, this part of the painting is just going to kick my ass, and I'll avoid it for weeks, and then there's no more time left, and I've got to get to it, and then all of a sudden it's like boom, 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 and it was done, and I've been stressing over it for all that time for no reason. So just getting to it is usually the best thing to do for me.
We've got very similar personalities. All this stuff you're saying, I completely identify with. It's kind of weird. What is your favorite? Do you have a favorite book of all time if you had to pick just one?
Man,
that's tough.
That is tough. I don't even think I could.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, lately, man, I don't even want to know if I don't think I could say. Going back to McCullough, his book on the Wright brothers, I loved that book.
Oh, is it good?
Yeah. It's just like from an artist's perspective. And then actually, Steve Martin's book I really liked a lot, Born Standing Up.
I love that one. I thought that was so good.
Mm-hmm. That felt, I really related to a lot of what he was saying.
Yeah, that's I read that maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I thought it was so good. And you don't have to be, you have to be interested in the artistic process, but not comedy to get that. I thought it was very, very well done. I don't know if you have time for this, but if you watch films or documentaries, do you have any favorites?
Yeah. There's a recent one, American Master, PBS American Masters did one on Andrew Wyeth.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. That I just loved. I watched it, I don't know, like 2 or 3 times in a row almost.
Oh, really?
A few days. Yeah. He's a big artist for me. I love his work. And then actually another documentary on him named, it's called Snow Hill. Mm-hmm. It was done by an artist named Bo Bartlett.
Yeah.
He did that one on Andrew Wyeth as well. But it's funny, I've actually a few months ago, I was really into finding documentaries on artists for whatever reason. I was watching them as I was painting, semi-watching them as I was painting. So there's a whole bunch that I got into. I don't know if you want a list of them, but they're probably pretty inside, like you probably need to be an artist to appreciate them. But
what's 1 or 2 of them that came to mind?
So there's one called Herb and Dorothy, which I think is interesting to people, even if you're not an artist. It's about this couple that were collectors of, pretty avant-garde contemporary art. And they had a really relatively low budget that they were working with, but they were able to buy art, and they built this amazing collection. And they lived in this little apartment, and every square inch of their apartment was covered with art. And then they ended up, I'm not going to say what they ended up doing with the collection because I don't want to be a spoiler here.
Yeah.
But anyway, they just did a cool, nowadays, but they did a cool thing with their collection when it was all said and done. And
nice.
I dream of collectors like that are in it, collecting my work because they love it rather than trying to, make some money off of it one day.
Yeah, like a alternative to a mutual fund.
Yeah, right. But to each their own. That's fine too, I guess. But
yeah, sure.
So I like that one. There's another one called The Cool School. It's the story of the Ferris Art Gallery in Southern California. Mm-hmm. But that one might pretty interesting, I think, to people, even if you're not. It's somewhat historic. There's some historic interest in that one as well, so it's not so inside. But yeah, those couple are pretty cool.
Those are great. Obviously, those have never been mentioned. I'll put links to those. So thinking about all the time you've spent on the ocean, exploring around, hiking, mountain biking, spending time in the Southwest, when you think about the most powerful experience you ever had in the outdoors, and that could be scary, funny, just a memorable, really cool experience, is there any experience that comes to mind?
I might have, let's see. God, there's a lot of, nothing really scary. I don't think the scariest things would probably happen when I was surfing, just surfing waves that were too big that I shouldn't have been doing. But there's a fun one recently. I have a little, I call it like my little painting cabin out in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And I was out there with some artist friends recently, and we were so it's in the Vermilion Cliffs area of Arizona.
Yep.
And just up the street from my place, there's this really cool hike where you could hike up to the Vermilion Cliffs, and we were going to go out for like an hour or something like that. And so we brought just little bottles of water, whatever they are, 8 ounce or whatever those little bottles are.
Sure.
And we didn't bring any food or anything. We just started hiking. And then, you know how once you get going, you want to see what's around the next corner, and then you want to see what's around the next corner. So when it was all said and done, we did a 6-hour hike up to the base of the Vermilion Cliffs and back. And we were just like, man, it was like a movie when you see someone crawling, in the Sahara, just like looking for water. By the end of the hike, we were just kind of dumb, didn't plan well on that one, but it was just such a cool experience. I mean, we saw just so many different types of landscape on that hike, and just wild colors like minerals in the dirt, and just so many varieties of landscape and weather on that hike, and some wildlife and stuff like that. So it was really memorable for me.
Yeah, the desert, for people who haven't spent time in the desert, it's hard to explain, because I've been to some pretty extreme environments, like on mountains and high altitude and all that kind of stuff. But I remember one time I was in Canyonlands and I was out running by myself, and I remember thinking, like, if I break my leg like right now, like, I'm dead. No, and no way around it. Whereas, and I don't think I'd ever really had that feeling before, but just the extreme of the heat and no water and nowhere to hide from that sun, it is a unforgiving landscape. I don't think I ever fully appreciated it until I really appreciated it.
Yeah,
it's scary.
It is. We had 2 experiences there. So I was out there with Jeremy Lipking, Glenn Dean, and Josh Elliott, who's another artist friend from Montana. Mm-hmm. And at one point, Glenn kind of started going off on his own. We were all kind of going the same direction, but taking different routes and stuff. And Glenn didn't want to climb up this really steep hill because he's a smart one. And so he was kind of following this creek that was meandering up this, on this hike. And then all of a sudden Josh, Jeremy, and I realized, where's Glenn? We couldn't find him. We're yelling his name. He wasn't hearing us, and we didn't have any cell service. And then we were going, he's okay, right? We were all looking at each other. Yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. And then we kept trying to call him, and he's fine, right? Yeah, he'll be fine. And, obviously he ended up being okay, but we were just freaking out about that for that reason. Like, man, where he could be anywhere and anything could have happened to him. And then on the way down, Josh Elliott was running through that same creek. It was like basically a sandy bottom. He's running through it, just being silly. And all of a sudden he drops down all the way up to his hip in quicksand.
Oh man.
One of his legs just sunk all the way in, and he just fell forward, and it just could have been bad. He could have broken something, or it was just scary. Like, what are we going to do? Carry him for like a 4-hour hike? From that point on, it probably would have been a 3-4 hour hike.
Oh yeah.
So
damn.
Yeah. I don't know, man. So yeah, I get that. There's times, but that's why we usually we have a buddy system where we like to, when we go out to the desert, we like to be with someone else, because there's some extreme stuff out there.
There definitely is. This is a tough one, but when you think about advice you've received over your life, artistic or otherwise, does anything stick out as the best piece of advice you've ever received? Yeah,
that is tough. I guess I'll relate it to the art, because I think that's easiest for me to think of.
Sure.
A couple things. So one, an artist friend named Scott Burdick, who I studied with when I was in my development stages. I'm still developing, but early on in my career, he said something to the effect of, if you're passionate about what it is that you're painting, you're always going to find an audience for your work. Mm-hmm. So that was a big one for me, because a lot of what he painted is portraits of people, and that's not really a subject that people think of as something you can live off of and that people are going to necessarily buy. But, he's been able to live off of that kind of thing, and other artists have as well. And so just that, I think that gave me a sense of freedom in my head, where I said, well, I could just do whatever I want. And as long as I'm as long as I feel good about it and I'm passionate about it, then I don't have to really worry about it beyond there. And a lot of this thinking of selling a painting or making a living off of the painting, it's not the first thing I'm thinking of, but there's something freeing about that, where I can trick myself into saying, okay, well, I'll be able to sell this. Then I don't have to worry about wasting my time or just worry about making a living. I'll just do it and someone will buy it. And that's just tricking myself into freeing myself to paint whatever I feel like painting,
Yep.
Not sure if that makes any sense, but
no, that makes perfect sense.
And then in that vein, my brother actually, if you build it, they will come. He sort of took that quote and changed it to, if you paint it, it will sell, or if you paint them, they will sell, whatever he said. Which I was struggling at the time with doing really large paintings, because I'd been wanting to do them, but I think I was being a little bit, I don't know. I was just worried about putting in all that time and effort. And then I just felt guilty about quote unquote, wasting time on it. It's never a waste.
Sure.
Obviously. But, he said that to me, and I just kind of, okay, I went with that. And sure enough, he was right. And so I think that being, a lot of times I have to trick myself into doing something. So if I can make it make sense from from that perspective, sometimes it helps me.
I think that's so valuable for people to hear, because, somebody who has accomplished what you've accomplished, that you still need to do that trickery, because, that's the kind of stuff I have to do. And I think there may be some idea, well, once I figure this out and once I'm a pro, I don't have to do that anymore. And so I love hearing that you still do that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it's big. And another thing is giving myself time to screw around. And when I say screw around, that's staring at the wall, or looking through an art book, or doodling, or just walking outside and staring at a tree, or whatever it is. Just, I feel guilty a lot of times because I've got a family at home that I want to be spending time with. And, but for my art, I need to have that space and that time to explore and play around. And, a lot of ideas come from those moments when I'm not actually sitting down and trying to work, but when I'm just letting my mind wander a little bit. So, allowing yourself that time is really valuable, when it comes to an artistic journey. I think that's a really important thing. It can be hard, but again, I do have to trick myself into it. I have to say, look, this is part of your job. Mm-hmm. As silly as it seems, it's part of your job to go walk around on a hike or look through books, even if it's looking through a magazine or just whatever it is, it's just a part of it. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing for me, man. I feel like I'm behind and I'm still figuring things out. And, we're all going through the same thing, trying to get somewhere, and who knows how we're going to get there. Just got to figure it out,
I'm glad to hear you say that. So next to last question, if you could make a request or offer words of wisdom or offer advice to the people who are listening to this, and it's people who love the West in one way or the other. Obviously, we've got people that love Western art. We've got people that love the West from a conservation standpoint, from an athletic standpoint. Are there any words of wisdom you would offer to those folks?
I don't know. It's tough for me. I mean, I don't think I'm going to be great in this. I don't know. I don't know if I have a great answer for that, but I mean, I'll tell you this. I've been in really, really remote areas of the West. Mm-hmm. And when I'm walking around and I look down and I see a plastic bag or some stupid piece of trash out there, it just drives me crazy. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't think your listeners need to hear this, but obviously, pick up after yourselves and just be careful about that trash wandering. Cause that can ruin an experience when you're out there and you feel like, a lot of times I feel like I've been somewhere where no one else has been, which I know is not true because it's pretty much all been explored now, but that's one cool thing about the West. But yeah, to see that out there, and obviously when you're out on native lands, just be super respectful of everything out there. A lot of times I'll be out and I'll see some pottery shards from, prehistoric pottery that's out there. And, it's kind of cool to sometimes pick it up and look at it, but just put it right back down where you found it if you do want to look at it. Because I've been out with people that'll just go out there and stick it in their pocket, and that's just not cool, So
I think that's great advice. I mean, it's basic, but very, very good advice that people should heed. And I think you talk about the plastic, obviously in the West, but as a surfer, I mean, you've seen your fair share of that too. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. One more thing I will say that it's coming to me right now.
Sure.
If you're not an artist and you are going out into nature, bring a sketchbook with you, grab some watercolors or an oil paint sketch box or something, and give yourself the freedom to play around a little bit and try to make a little painting or a little drawing on location. Don't worry about if it comes out great or not. There's something really cool that I get to do is I get to stand in one spot when I'm painting outdoors, and I might stare at a view for 45 minutes or an hour while I'm making a painting. And there's something really cool about being in one spot for an hour and just looking at this spot and experiencing that one location in that way, where you're studying it and you're trying to get it down on paper or onto a canvas. So I really recommend that for people. I think everybody should participate in art. It's just a great thing to do. Just for your own mental health and a way to connect with nature in a way that you might not otherwise.
That's perfect advice, and I need to take you up on that as well, because I've got this watercolor set that I need to use. So I'm gonna do that because of you. So that's awesome. So how can people follow your work online? Where's the best places to look you up on the old internets?
Yeah, I mean, just search my name. What I should do on this podcast is I should pronounce my name because nobody knows how to say my last name.
Do it.
So my name is Logan Maxwell Hagege, and last name it's spelled Hagege. So that's Hagege. Anyhow, so you can Google me. I don't know. I've got a website that I don't update as often as I should, and my Instagram is Logan Maxwell Hagege. That's updated fairly often. But yeah, that's the best way to find me.
Well, man, this was really great. And like I said, I've been following your work forever. I'm a huge fan of it. And I just appreciate you taking the time. I know you've got a lot going on, but thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise, I'm a fan of your show, and it's been fun. I feel like it's a little odd actually hearing your voice on the other side of the line here. I feel like I'm in a weird dream where I'm talking to Ed, but here I am.
Hey, it's Ed again. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast, and thanks for listening to that particular episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Before you go, I've got 3 quick things. Number 1, if you like the podcast, please do me a huge favor. Either pass it along to a friend who may be interested, share it on your social media, or go to iTunes and give it a 5-star review. All those things would mean a lot to me, and they would really help to spread the word about the podcast. Number 2, if you've listened to many of these episodes, you know that I love reading and I love talking about books. Every other month, I send out a quick email with a few books that I've recently read and highly recommend. The subjects are varied, but they're pretty much all nonfiction with an emphasis on history, biographies, adventure narratives, and topics related to the American West. There are no sales pitches for ranches, no spam, no other kind of nonsense, just books. So if you'd like to sign up for the list, head to Mountain and Prairie/reading, or just go to Mountain and Prairie and there's a massive tab at the top that says book recommendations. Click on it. There are a ton of good books that I've read. Some of the old email lists are on there. You can go crazy. There are a lot of books. And finally, if you know anyone I should interview for the podcast, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. All my contact info is at mountainandprairie.com, and I'm on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to have some recommendations and suggestions of interesting people I should meet. All right, that's it. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.